Welcome to the Off Leash Podcast with Dr. Pete. I'm Dr. Pete, and we're glad you've joined us for today's show. Remember, we're not here to say what you want us to say. We're here to be an advocate for your pet.
And that is all you can ever ask for in
a
veterinarian.
It is all you can ever ask for, yeah. You know, that's actually an art form, learning to say, you know, sometimes you hurt people's feelings with things you have to say. Sometimes you got to get it out. And
you don't care about hurting feelings.
No, I do. I do care about hurting feelings. But I just think that sometimes, you know, people have some preconceived notion about what their dog or cat has when they see us. And it's like, no, this is not it at all. You know, and you're about 180 off.
I have seen you make grown women cry in the exam room because you tell them that you can't give whipped cream to your dog anymore.
Yeah. Well, they have these pup cups for people at Starbucks.
I know.
And, and they got, you know, they got milk in them and stuff. And so for the right dog, it doesn't bother them at all. But for the wrong dog, next thing you know, they're vomiting or they've got ear infections or hot spots or something like that. But anyway.
Well, let's start it off today. First of all, we have a special guest, Storm.
How's it going?
He is our videographer for our social media accounts. So any videos that you see on there were done by him. He does a wonderful job.
Gotta love it.
Yes. And we're here today to talk a little bit about his dog and some issues that he's been having with his dogs. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. This is my first podcast.
Ever?
So, yes, ever.
Nice. So hopefully we'll get you some good information out of this.
Yes, that's the hope.
So we start off with some segments. We're going to start off with Old Dog's New Tricks, which is where Dr. Pete learns every week as a practicing veterinarian new things. Anything you've learned this week? You
know, I'm not sure I'm going to tell you anything new that you didn't maybe already know today, but I will tell you this Old Dog New Trick thing is sometimes you tell the story about when we graduated from vet school, the dean comes in and addresses all 53 of us in the Michigan State class of the spring of 1974. And he says, hey, folks, we got good news for you, and we got bad news for you, and we got horrible news for you. And we're like, oh,
that's encouraging.
That's encouraging, yeah. It's like, you know, what's the good news? We wanted to start out with the good news, obviously. And I said, well, what's the good news? And he said, well, you somehow or other, we're surprised at this, but you all passed your national boards, and they're going to allow you to work on people's pets and livestock. Like, oh, that's the good news. Well, good. We're all happy to hear that, aren't we, folks? And we all agreed that we were. And then they said, oh, what's the bad news? And then we said, well, half of what we taught you here at Michigan State's incorrect. And and they're like, well, this is the first time we'd ever heard this. And then they said, what's the horrible news? Well, we ain't sure which half. And I'm going to tell you what that all meant is that was exactly correct. Everything was not exactly right with what we were taught. But the good news is there was more good news. The good news is it wasn't all 180 degrees wrong. In other words, it was 10 degrees wrong or 4 degrees wrong or 12 degrees wrong. So when we get out of school, we start re-educating ourselves. And we didn't understand that was going to happen right away, that we'd start learning things. We thought we kind of knew what we needed to know when we got out of school. And then the first day you learn 3 or 4 things you didn't know that you knew in school. And then the next day you learn 3 or 4 things. And then the next day you learn 5 or 6 things. And so it seemed like that was sort of defining what we did as professionals was kind of learn what to do. And you know, the medications changed and the diseases changed, and some of them became more prevalent, some became less prevalent. For instance, distemper, we used to see distemper, canine distemper.
You hardly ever see that anymore.
Yeah, I don't hardly ever see it. If you go to Mexico or sometimes in remote places in the United States, sometimes even where there's a high propensity of dogs that aren't vaccinated for distemper, you'll see it. But you don't see it hardly at all anymore. So, but they do see it in third world countries and stuff. So we are seeing we are seeing canine distemper occasionally, but it's very, very rare. So that's kind of what's changed. And then there was no such thing as parvo when I graduated from school. The only parvovirus we knew about was the one that cats got, panleukopenia, which was a parvovirus.
I didn't even know cats got parvo.
Yeah, well, but they called that feline distemper. So feline distemper and canine distemper were 2 different kinds of distemper. So they were not. They call them distemper.
Were they intermingling with each other? Like a cat can't give it to a dog.
Well, we think that's how dogs got parvo. That eventually the panleukopenia,
mutated.
Yeah, mutated and turned and crossed species. Because generally viruses are pretty specific for a certain species.
How long ago was this?
Well, this would be 19 70s.
So parvo's like a relatively
That's like an 82, 83 deal.
really.
Yeah, and they came out with a vaccine, but they didn't have it it was not available enough for everybody to have it. And they talked about it. Well, this is coming down the pike. This is coming down the pike. Whatever.
So like parvo back then was like the new respiratory disease now.
Yeah, except
It was mass panic among
well, it was
pet
mass
owners.
panic. And in fact, we can talk a little bit about that more. We've talked a little bit about it already, but I was at the VMX meeting down in Florida and talked to a couple of experts, and they don't think that they think this is probably just parainfluenza or Bordetella or mycoplasma. We're just seeing more of it in communities that dogs weren't particularly well vaccinated for.
Huh.
So that's kind of what we're seeing, that things change. And,
Right.
and you have to work in the business to watch them change. And that was my fear if I retired and I just did this, that eventually I'd become irrelevant. And irrelevant means I talk about stuff that I really don't know about because I'm not doing it every day. I'm not doing it every week. I'm not doing it every month. And so that's the part. Things change and you have to watch them change. And so we were pretty sure there was a new virus out and there was a bacterial component that followed up the virus. But they're really telling us that really we don't think that that's as much of a big deal as everybody thought it was. Because now they've had enough time to collect data. And nobody's come out and said anything because there's been nothing new. They just kept finding mycoplasma, Bordetella, parainfluenza.
Yeah.
And so they think probably this was just maybe a mutated strain of that. But certainly that's the way it is right now. But going back to this, the parvo and the distemper and that sort of thing, and even the parvovirus, they had a vaccine for it, and then the virus changed a little bit, and the vaccine didn't work as well. It kind of reminds you of the COVID thing. So we lived through the quote-unquote COVID thing with dogs a long, long time ago. And back then, now when I see parvo dogs, they're usually puppies. And so I'm seeing parvo puppies. And
Right.
back then, we saw 9-year-old Rottweilers had parvo. 6-year-old Labs had parvo. 5-year-old Airedales had parvo. And everybody came in vomiting and having diarrhea. So it was a big mess. We didn't really know how to treat them. We used antiemetics, IV fluids, et cetera. We didn't, and it was worse and worse and worse.
Right.
And now, in fact, right now, we're in the day of, now when they get parvo, they have a monoclonal antibody. So you test them for parvo, they get the monoclonal antibody. You give the monoclonal antibody IV, and they're better within 2 or 3 days if you catch them early in the disease.
Yeah.
So for every card Mother Nature's playing, the veterinary community, at least the scientific veterinary community, is playing a bigger card or trying to play a bigger card. So that's the important thing.
And I remember you even talked about before, you're a good veterinarian for this area. Because I know.
I'm all right in this area, but I'd be not in San Antonio. I wouldn't be very good.
See, I don't know if you remember this when we were down in Florida at the VMX Expo. I showed you the video of the mango worms.
Oh yeah.
And you were like, I've never seen that.
Never seen those.
Have you ever
Really?
seen?
No.
Okay, so it's this thing that I keep seeing on TikTok, and it's basically like they squeeze like a part of the dog, and like it looks like little whiteheads are coming out, but they're mango worms.
Yeah, it's in Central America or something, isn't it?
Is it a regional thing?
I don't know. I thought it was down in. It's obviously in more tropical areas.
No.
It's not very common up in the Midwest. I don't think that they'd be able to survive our winters.
This is a pimple picker's dream come true. Watching these things come out because they're.
Well, I think that's why it recommended it to me because I watched the pimple popper content. It was like she might like this.
You could use them to fish for goldfish, I guess. But
Oh my gosh,
little itty bitty hook. Anyway,
that's gross.
yeah, that is gross, but I'm sure they'd go for it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, protein's protein, man.
That's true.
Well, yeah, you learn something new every day.
But I think that's kind of what I'm getting at, though, with the old dog, new trick. So it's an old dog, it's a new trick. Maybe it's a new trick, maybe it's not a new trick.
Yeah.
So we learn, and it's never 180 degrees. Oh, we were completely wrong about this. No, you were partially wrong about this. You had most of it right, and you had the treatment mostly right. There's a few things you could have done to improve on everything. So you know what you do? You go home, you learn about it, and you go home and you improve on something.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the important thing. And I think that's one thing I've been really proud of our group as veterinarians. We change things when we think things ought to be changed, and I think that's the most important thing. You see things that are, a little bit screwed up, and you fix it. And so I think about the way we treated ear infections back then. We only had a little drug called Panalog, and so if it was an ear infection, you got Panalog once a day in the ear. If it was a bad one, you got it 2 days. Twice a day, and if it was really bad, you got it 3 times a day in the ear. And so That was Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So there's a lot better way to treat ear infections, which we do now. So we just learned and we refined it. I've always gotten to this thing. I like to draw the ear treasure map, and I drew it just a little bit different every single year. And people are like, why don't you just make a copy and hand it to people? No. They'd learn a lot when you
For
when
anybody
when they
wanting,
watched you draw it. They would learn. Okay,
and
this
we're
had-
going to make a video on that to post on our
someday.
social media.
Someday we
So
will.
keep an eye out for it for Dr.
Okay.
Pete drawing the ear treasure map.
I remember when I first told you about my dog, because she suffers from a lot of ear infections. You drew that for me, and I was like, "This is mind blowing."
I know it's very eye opening for
It is.
especially for customers that don't or
Well, when you
clients
draw it-
that don't know.
when you draw it, it makes sense, and you say,
Exactly.
"Oh, okay." And then I'll even, if you stay in the room long enough, I'll even tell you little things like, "Well, here's the deal. This is only in the right ear. Do you know why that is?" And you would say, "No. Why is it only the right ear? Because what you have a little bit of an ear infection in each ear, and let's say on a 1 to 12 scale, this ear is an 11, this ear is a 2." And what happens is we interpret that as just one ear. What the self-mutilation thing, you dig in the ear with the right foot.
Right.
So most of those dogs that have it in just the right ear are usually right-handed. So it means they take their right
Oh.
they take their right foot and dig it through here and make it starts out as an ear infection and it really blossoms into a gigantic mess because the dog fusses with it. Just like you did with mosquito bites when you were a kid.
Yeah. My dog only circles to the right.
Yeah. So
It's
they're
funny.
right-handed,
never
left-handed. They don't
realized
talk
that.
about. Listen, that never comes up in school. If I were to go to school and say, "Well, we'd like you to teach a class on otitis externa," I go in there and if I start talking about right-handed dogs and left-handed dogs, they probably call security and have me dragged down the building.
Yeah, they don't believe it until.
And maybe even in handcuffs. I don't know, but you get the idea.
I've never known that. That's
yeah.
wild.
Be pictures around campus with me.
Yeah.
Wanted.
Shots.
Oh my gosh.
Wanted dead or alive, preferably the latter. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next segment, Canine Chronicles, which is news in the dog world or dog food community. Have anything you'd like to share with us today?
Not really. I mean, they have the big AFCO meeting, which is the dog food manufacturers and stuff. So I haven't heard anything that came out of there. I suspect maybe there'll be some things, there'll be some news in future episodes of this Off Leash
Any
podcast.
Veterinary news you learned from VMX while we were down there?
I mean, I went to stuff that I kind of knew about, but then I got to find points of this. I went to the lecture on the canine parvo monoclonal antibody stuff, and there was a lady there that worked at a very prestigious veterinary clinic in New York, and she told us how they did their stuff, and they'd had a lot of experience using this, and she went on to talk about doing things that maybe I wouldn't have thought about doing, and so. And then really that's the old dog new trick thing is you come back and then you try what she did and see if it works better than what you were doing.
Right.
If it works not as well as what you were doing, you go back to what you were doing. But if anybody, how this works, they teach you, we always used to refer to them as parlor tricks. And so you learn a parlor trick in your veterinary medicine thing. And once you learn a parlor trick, then if it works for you, then you use it 4 or 5 times.
Right.
They just call it. This is my new trick. Actually, I don't ever say I thought of this, but I hardly ever say I didn't think of this.
Right,
This
yeah.
is somebody else's brainchild.
Right.
I try to take credit for where probably I should give credit to other people. But anyway, and sometimes they got it mostly right, but they didn't get it all right. So then
Right.
sometimes we'll refine it even more than they did.
You know what? There is something that I do want to bring up in the dog world, or I'm actually going to call it the veterinary community, that I want to hear your opinion about. Big corporations buying up vet clinics.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's
Really?
going on. Yeah, well, I mean, here's what's going on.
And I bring this up for a reason. One of my Bree, the friend that stayed with me, she had to get her dog's teeth, one of her dog's teeth pulled, and the bill ended up coming up, or the quote ended up coming up to $800 to get a tooth pulled. And she took it to a clinic where it was a corporate-owned clinic.
Yeah,
You see those high prices.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, it's more expensive now. It's a lot more expensive now than it was 4 or 5 years ago. And a lot of that's, interest rates have gone up.
Right.
But I mean, $800 to pull a
Veterinarian
tooth.
salaries have gone up. And lots of times before they'll do stuff, they have to do blood work and they want to do a CBC and a chemistry profile. And maybe they'll even want to do a heart check before they when to go ahead and anesthetize this dog. You don't just walk in and pull the dog's tooth. They have to be anesthetized. So some of them require some a workup beforehand, and not everybody does, and sometimes other places will. So I think you look at it and you kind of decide. You do your physical on the dog, and with us, we can kind of look. This dog weighed 72 pounds last year, weighed 71 pounds this year, weighed 73 pounds today, and you take a history, do your physical. You don't feel any tumors, so you kind of do a general physical. I went and got my hernias repaired a number of years ago, and when I went in for that, I just had an EKG. Now they had some history on me, having done the blood work prior to this, but I'm like, okay, what kind of workup we got to do to fix this hernia? And they're like, just an EKG. I just don't want your heart to quit when you're screwing around on the table getting your hernia fixed. And I'm like, okay. And by the way, that was the first one they did without the laparoscope. They just surgically cut down on it and fixed it. That was not fun because I knew a lot of the people in the surgery room, and you got all your junk laying out there, and
that's not the best.
They come by and look at you, and you're kind of groggy, and then they tell you who they are, and they pull their mask down and look at you. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like you, your stuff, and them at the end of the table. No. So I told the surgeon when I went back to get the bandages, the dressing off and everything, I said, if I have another hernia, I'm going to South Dakota to get this one repaired. He says, wow, you're not satisfied with the facilities and the people here? No, I'm fine with it. I just hated having 5 or 6 people come up and pull their masks down and look at me across the scenery. Was, they got all your stuff out there and doing stuff to you. And then they got you in, they don't have you completely asleep. When I did the laparoscopic one, I was completely asleep. The other one had a spinal on. And so you're kind of awake, and you're talking about all you're talking about all sorts of crap you shouldn't talk about when you're out, and it's like having a couple of drinks and then you're saying stuff that the next day you think, is there a way that sounded charming? Probably not. And so you worry about all that stuff. And so for anybody, of course they do it with a laparoscope now, and it's, with a robot. And so I don't even think they're in the room. They're in another part of the they're in another part of the room, doing all this stuff. So, and I just got my appendix out this year, and they did that with the robot too.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is. And I got done at midnight, and I got up and had breakfast in the morning. They had lunch at noon. They had all I wanted to eat and then some. And they said I was getting expensive to feed, so they sent me home at 2:00 in the afternoon. So, and that's what somebody says, well, sometimes people your age will stay longer. And I said, well, but, I think probably I was obnoxious enough that they thought, well, let's just put this guy out on the street. And, but it was one of those.
He's good to go.
Yeah. Go ahead and drive your car home, bud. It's fine. My wife, Sharon, showed up to drag me out of the building. Then I got my car and drove home. Yeah. And then they had a prescription for me for, an opioids for the pain and stuff. I didn't have any pain. I went home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I took a nap on the couch and got up and, frogged around, did stuff. And the next night I went to a party. So it was just, having this laparoscopic stuff now is really pretty cool. And they do it in veterinary world, just so you know that. Your dog got spayed with a laparoscope. And
she got biopsied.
And had a liver biopsy, with that, yep.
Yeah.
What's the benefits of that? Why are they moving?
It's less invasive. You're not opening everything up, and I don't know. There's some pros and cons to it. I mean, a friend of mine got a laparoscopic gallbladder removal. They actually nicked the pancreas when they were in there. And,
oh gosh.
Yeah, and they came close to giving him last rites. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So some stuff is, so there's things that can go wrong no matter how you do it. So in fact, that's what most people in the audience should understand, that there's nothing routine about any surgery. Stuff can happen during any procedure.
Is that why the bill was so high for my friend?
I don't know. I don't think they knew what they were really. I don't think they understood exactly what needed to be done, because we did it and we didn't have to pull teeth. So
she took it to your clinic, and I think I think you guys took care of whatever was wrong for
we did,
$200.
Yeah, more than that, but not much more than that. $300 probably. Yeah, it's a time and materials thing. If it doesn't take long, and if I recall, she didn't need much done in the way of having dental or teeth cleaned or anything. Yeah, so, it's kind of a time materials thing, and that's the other thing clients are always looking for. I'd like to know what the up and down of this is. Well, some of these things could be as little as $500, or it could be as much as $1,800, and so because we don't know what. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but I worked at a racetrack when I first got out of school, and I can remember they had the jockeys' quarters, which you probably are familiar with, and then. And as the veterinarian, as the track veterinarian, I got to go in the jockey's quarters, and a horse owner came in and he says, "Hey, I need somebody to ride my horse in the third race or fourth race, whatever it is." And one of the jockeys raises his hand. I remember the guy's name was Otis. I could tell you his last name. He's probably deceased by now, but nonetheless, he says, "I'll ride your horse." He says, "How much?" He says, $25, and that's what they got paid for riding a horse at a quarter horse track. And this guy says, "I only ever pay $20. He says, "Well, my price is $25. He says, "I'll give you $20. So this oldest guy climbed on the horse in the fourth race or whatever it was, and he rode down the track, and he got within about 50 yards of the finish line, and he jumped off and let the horse loose. And the horse owner came by, and he says, "What happened to my horse? Did he hit a rock, or what happened? Why did you jump off? Do you think he was on sound or something?" And he says, "Let me show you something." And this oldest guy takes the horse owner over there, and he points to a little place on the ground. And he says, "See that right there?" He says, "Is that where he tripped or whatever?" He says, "That's where your $20 ran out."
Oh, my gosh.
And he got set down for a month or a week or whatever it was, so he couldn't ride horses for a while. And he says, "But right there, that's where your $20 ran out." And the guy was furious and wanted to fight him on the track. Oh, it's just a gigantic mess. But it was funny as hell. And somebody collected the horse and everything, and they took him back to the thing. I doubt I'll bet that guy paid $25 from there on in.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, he got this horse already. He probably was taking a lot of time to get this horse ready for the race, and the guy jumped off it. And he wasn't going to, I don't think he was going to win it, but he was at a place to where he was a DNF, did not finish. Yeah.
Dang. That's crazy.
I didn't ever think that they have vets on hand at racetracks.
Well, almost every racetrack has a veterinarian that...
it does make sense.
Yeah, they're actually usually supervising urine and blood draws and things like that. And if they bring a horse out of the saddling paddock and he's limping, then they're like, "Well, I don't think I want the betting public to be betting on this horse without knowing that this dog's got a prominent
horse.
limp." Yeah, I know. Or what'd I say?
You said dog.
Oh yeah, well, there's dog tracks.
I say, is there dog?
They have veterinarians
track or a dog
when
track?
I think dog tracks are kind of closing now, but when they had dogs the same way, you got to watch them, walk them around, and you got to see whether they were sound or not sound.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it was unsound, it really didn't happen very often, because most of the time, like when you see a horse as a scratch, they refer to it as a scratch.
Mm-hmm.
It usually means the owner or the trainer or both requested their horse be scratched because there was something wrong, running a fever that day, what didn't need, limping, something happened, had diarrhea, whatever it was. But so there's almost always a reason why that happens. And so, but yeah, at a horse track, there's the state veterinarian. So I got paid by the state, not by the track.
Oh wow!
So you're a state employee, and so which makes you sometimes with the horse owners and the trainers, sometimes you're quote unquote. You try not to be this, but sometimes you're in the enemy,
right?
Because you scratch their horse, or in dog track cases, your dog.
That's wild.
Yep.
Well, let's get into some rock and roll history, shall we?
Sure. We're going to talk about my boy Del Shannon today.
Yes, okay. Your boy Del Shannon.
So I grew up around the Battle Creek area, Battle Creek, Michigan. And,
Del Shannon was from Battle Creek, wasn't he?
He was actually born in Coopersville, up in Grand Rapids.
Oh.
But he came down here. He went in the Army and got out of the Army and came down here and sold carpet in Battle Creek. But he joined a band called the Charlie Johnson Band. And there was a town scout came by one day and saw him and said, "You look pretty good." And so they dragged him into New York, and they had him, thought he had a couple of kind of snappy songs. So he did his snappy songs, and they, put him on acetate and everything. And then, I think what they do over there is they kind of listen to him, find out everybody in the building thinks they're doing. So Del Shannon, his real name was Chuck Westover, Charlie Westover. That was his name, Chuck Westover. They called him, but he liked the Del Rey car, and so he called himself Del Shannon. I can't remember where the Shannon came from.
Is that why Lana Del Rey is named her name?
That's
Yeah.
true.
I was
was
just
thinking
gonna
the same
think-
thing.
That's
Anyway,
someone.
his name wasn't really Del Shannon. It was
Yeah.
Chuck Westover. Anyway, so he came back and they said, well, your song, we put them out there, see how they sounded and everything. They didn't sound very good, so we're going to have you do a redo. And next time he went back there with this organ player, and he did this song called Runaway, which was a
I love
gigantic,
that song.
hit in 1961. But they didn't tell him it was a good song. He also did Hats Off to Larry and Little Town Flirt, and he did 3 or 4 songs, and they all became hits. But he came back to Battle Creek, and he was playing at a place here called the High Low Club. And there was always fights up there, and it was kind of a sketchy place. Anyway, they finally called him and said, well, we want you to go out on tour. And he says, why? He says, because we released your record, and in the first 3 or 4 days up and down the coast of New England, he says, we sold about 80,000 copies
Oh my gosh.
of your song.
And he had no idea.
Runaway. And he says, no. So I guess he goes down to, he said, when do you need me there? And he said he needed him in 2 days or something. So he goes down and breaks the door of where they kept his instruments all locked up in the High-Low Club. And so he broke the door down apparently and took his stuff out. and then he went to New York, and he came back off and on after that. But he was Del Shannon from there on in. Too bad the guy died. He died young.
How young?
Oh, let's see. He was probably in his early 50s, maybe late 40s when he died.
I can look it up if you want.
Yeah. And he died of, I think he kind of did himself in with tranquilizers or something like that.
February 8th,
I think he shot himself.
1990.
Yeah, so he shot himself. So 30 years after he became famous, he did himself in. But he always wrote what I refer to as lover's lament songs. In other words, he was always singing about getting the brown helmet from his wife or his girlfriend.
You would say that all the time.
Yeah, brown helmet, that's where people are like, what the hell is a brown helmet?
I learned very early on.
You get crapped on by your girlfriend, man. That's the brown helmet. So if you got the brown helmet,
my
you get
God.
crapped on by your other half. And so people are like, that's kind of disgusting. I said, well, if you were the one to get in the brown helmets, it's damn disgusting.
Yeah.
There they are. But he's always, if you even listen to his songs, yeah, these are songs. Yeah, this is his stuff, and he did great stuff. And that he had a thing called a musitron in the background that does that kind of lead in here. But anyway, great artist. And sorry you left this earth too soon.
I can't believe he was in Battle Creek.
Yeah, he's in Battle Creek. And
Wow.
in fact, Junior Walker, we talked about that earlier. Junior Walker was in Battle Creek. Then there was one of the guys, the founder of Earth, Wind, and Fire was from Battle Creek. So,
Really?
Yeah, so it has musical history, this town does. But anyway,
Did you cover this song when you were in your band?
yeah, we did. The high part was hard. We got girls up to do it. Yeah,
This
get
part?
somebody in the audience to do it. Yeah, turn it up, way up, way.
Misery, and I wonder,
Right here.
Wonder.
There you go. That's it. Anyway, he liked to do the real high stuff, and all his songs had high stuff in them. And he had that, and they had the musitron in it. And he was on Letterman. He's on all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
Anyway, he's gone now, and the world was a lot more fun with him than without him. Okay?
Rest in peace, Del Shannon.
It's the end of our musical thing.
I love that song. I wonder how you get all this information from people from Battle Creek. You don't think of that many people famous coming out of Battle Creek?
Well,
No.
I mean, when he was back in town, there would always be people got up and told stories about him.
Really?
Yeah, because they went to the High-Low Club. And back in those days, you had a house band, and they were the house band. Now people have somebody come in, they play one night. Back in those days, they opened up on Tuesday, and they played Tuesday night all through Saturday night. And they usually finished about 1 and 2 in the morning, and they were the house band. And so he was the house band at this place called the High-Low Club.
Where was that club at?
It was right down here.
It was on the corner, right across from where New Holland is, right?
Yeah. No. It was about where the park is down there with the waterfall.
Oh, Friendship Park.
Yeah. In fact, it's right across the street from the big hotel.
Interesting.
Yep. And there's
Oh.
if you drive down there, you'll see there's a plaque commemorating him.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah. And my friend and I went down there. I have an old car, so I drove my old car down there when they had the dedication. Yep.
You have multiple old cars.
Yep.
That's so crazy. They have that down there.
Yep.
Wow.
I love that. All right, let's get into our next segment, information and peace of mind. Storm, this is where you come in.
Oh boy. Here we go.
We're going to be talking about your dog.
Okay.
So tell
All
us
right.
about some issues that your dog's having.
All right. So my dog is Mila. She's a chocolate lab. She is.
Is she crazy?
She's pretty crazy.
I have a chocolate lab and I cannot stand it. I know I can't stand. It's not that I can't stand her. She's in deep shit right now.
She's nuts. Yeah, she's nuts.
Tell her. Tell
No,
everyone.
I'm not going to tell everybody what she did.
Oh, she's so naughty. She might have killed a koi fish
Oh gosh.
And in the wife's pond.
in the wife's pond.
Yep. So now that dog has a wanted dead or alive poster
All around town.
all around town now. Preferably the former, I think, is what that's.
And for any of you who have ever bought koi fish in your life, they are quite expensive.
Yep.
So
And a lab's favorite.
and a
apparently.
lab's, they're a delicacy. She loved it so much that she had to go back and get a second one.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
So
But anyway, let's tell me about your dog.
Mila, yeah, she's gonna be 6 in February. She's a chocolate lab. She's got a lot of personality, that's for sure. But definitely, I would say the last year she started really, really suffering from itchy ear, really bad, and noticeably itchy paws on a regular basis. And I think this is unrelated, but she also, from a young age, had really bad hips. We think it's hips. Just her in her back area, she can't stand for long periods of time without having to sit.
So here's what you need to do. You probably get a set of X-rays on her hips to see whether she needs pain meds or not. If she does, you're going to have to get her pain meds, because especially this is the winter in Michigan. It's been cold and damp here. It's been really cold. That's not too bad, but when it's cold and damp, it's bad. Cold and damp. That's tough on arthritic conditions, and that may be what you have. So, a lot of them have hip dysplasia, which is kind of a laxity in the joint to where, if you've ever driven a car, if you take a couple of the bearings out of the front, take a couple of the ball bearings out and then assemble that back up, it doesn't last very long because there's slop in there.
Right.
When you get that instability or the slop, then
Right.
you start to get wear and tear, and things go to hell in a handbasket in a fairly short order. You got ear infections. So in my book, most of the time that indicates to me that you have some sort of food allergy.
Okay.
Okay. So there's 3 things you can be allergic to: fleas, food, and environmental. So my guess is, and you could even be allergic to fleas, but that would not be where the lesions are. So the food thing would be the ears and occasional hot spots and that sort of thing. So, and I'm a big fan of getting beef, milk, and wheat out of the diet, and beef, milk, and wheat out of the treats. And so I usually try to put you on a diet that doesn't have beef, milk, or wheat in it, and then I take all the treats out of your hand and your family's hand. How many people in your house?
2 others.
Okay, 2 others. So you have to have 100% dedication by everybody in the house not to.
Yes.
Yeah, so you start feeding baby carrots or ice cubes or green beans or carrots or cucumbers, whatever you want. Not cucumbers and sour cream, just cucumbers. Not green bean casserole, just green beans in a can, the salty ones, okay? Make sure there's no beef or milk or wheat in the diet, and then see what happens.
Okay.
So typically what happens is, in 4 or 5 weeks, as those ears get better, and I might even tell you that you ought to clean them every so often, 2 or 3 times a week.
We have started doing that.
And that'll help a lot. And then really you should get to the point where that inflammation leaves. And then let's just see what happens with your feet. So if your feet get completely better, then you can say, well, this is probably a really bad food allergy with a mild environmental, because normally when they chew their front feet, that's usually environmental.
Okay.
So what environmental things, like in the spring tree pollen, in the summer grass pollen, in the fall and winter weeds, the rest of the year, if it's around year round.
Yeah, and it has been year round.
Okay, then I'd start looking at stuff in the house.
Okay.
And we're looking at dust mites, storage mites, those sorts of things. So they're getting that, and their feet are coming in contact with that, and that's what's causing the problem.
Okay.
Okay, so what are you going to do? I mean, the best thing to do is you go see a veterinarian, and they look at it and see what needs to be done here. Sometimes it's Apoquel, which is what they call.
She has taken Apoquel, actually.
Has that helped?
It helped for a period, but it only helps for maybe a couple hours. Okay. And if she misses it within a few hour period, it's hell in a handbasket, basically.
Okay. What does your dog weigh?
Probably around 96, between 90 and 100 pounds.
And you're given 1 pill once a day?
Yes.
Okay. This is what I would do. I'd probably give you a half a pill 3 times a day,
Okay.
and I wouldn't put it in cheese.
Okay.
I would put it in if you could, they make these pill pockets, or you could even use marshmallows. They work pretty
Really?
good. Yeah. So you get marshmallows and just break them in. So the half-life on Apoquel, which is a Janus kinase inhibitor, it sort of fills all the parking places on the itch receptor. So it only lasts about 4.5, 5 hours. So if it only half of it, so if it was like 8 milligrams, that'd be half of a 16. You'd in 5 hours there'd only be 4 milligrams, and then there would be 2 milligrams, then there would be 1 milligram. So we think what happens on these pills, they wear out too soon.
Oh, okay.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So I would do half 3 times a day. You're going to be spending more, but you might get a better reaction.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And what you might do is just put her on 2 full ones twice a day for 4 or 5 days, then try dropping down to a half 3 times a day. Yeah. I like Apoquel. I think it's a great drug. But I will tell you that it doesn't work very well for food allergies.
Okay.
That's my opinion. But my opinion is it doesn't work very well for food allergies. And most veterinarians have about the same opinion I do.
And I would say that has shown in her, if her ears have persisted, but it helps her paws, but her ears are definitely still in
So what you want to do there, you want to get everything out of there like I suggested you do. And then really what you want to do is you probably want to be on maybe Pred and Apoquel for 10 days. So you're on the steroid. Steroids work fairly well on food allergies.
Okay.
Get that all under control. Take the stuff out of the food. See what happens.
Okay.
So I would call your veterinarian. I see if they've seen you recently, they may be willing to go ahead and sell you some prednisone or prescribe prednisone for 10, 15, 20 days, something like that. And you give Apoquel at the same time. And then you take the Pred away and then see what you're left with.
Okay.
So everything's a clinical trial in this world. So so you try this and you try that and you try this and sometimes we apologize to clients. Hey, listen, sorry, it took 9 months to figure this out, but we've got to figure it out now, and this is what it takes to take care of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. That definitely, I think her diet is definitely one of the big things that needs adjustment between that and. Would you recommend? I mean, across the board, food and treats.
I start with treats.
Okay.
Because then I know if it works right away that it was just the treats. If I change the food, so I hardly ever change multiple things at the same time because then I never know what really
you can't narrow down.
why you had a decent response. Was it in fact sometimes I'll put you on 3 meds. I'll put you on all 3 meds at the same time on day 0. On day 0 you get 3 meds. You go to day 10 and you take one of them away, and you go to day 20 you take one away, and at day 30 you take one away, and you can kind of figure out where everything
was working,
where the wheels fell off. Exactly. So now you know what works. Is there a bacterial component to these feet? Yes or no. Was there a yeast component to these feet? Yes or no. What was growing in the ears? Yes or no. We need to know what was growing in the ears. And once you figure all that stuff out, once you figure most of this stuff out, you'll be in pretty good shape. And then it's up to you to kind of educate your veterinarian and go, yeah, when I did this, this happened. When I did that happened. And then you can kind of, we'll usually document it in our records. This client does better on 10 days worth of Pred with Apoquel, and then take the Pred away after 10 days, et cetera.
Right.
And then your grandpa comes to live with you for a week or 10 days, and he feeds the dog all sorts of crap, and then you get to do it do it all over again. Hey, Grandpa, we're gonna break 2 or 3 of your fingers, the ones you're holding the treats with, if you don't keep doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do I have to go home and not be able to hold a pencil?
Oh my goodness.
What's the matter?
You.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's what you got to do. Yeah.
I have seen you give our dogs cheese.
No, you've not seen me give them cheese.
Triscuit, crackers, whatever.
Well, maybe
our
once in a while
dogs
they get
don't really have allergies.
No, and they don't get much in the way of nonsense.
Yeah.
It's not like I have a pet store. I pick some treats up, and by the way, while we're talking about this, we're getting ready to launch our own brand of treats here.
Yes, we are.
I was just asking.
About Voyager dog food.
Voyager dog food.
So it'll have
treats.
ABCs, apples, bananas, and carrots. It'll have some other stuff in there too.
Very limited ingredients.
Yeah, very limited ingredients and no copper sulfate, and it'll be what I deem to be a very effective treatment for getting your dog to do the things you want to do.
I would say that's what I'm going to have to rotate in.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we do with our dogs. I mean, my wife, they're in a cage at night so that they don't do stuff to our home.
Right.
And when I was a kid, people always like, "Wow, you put your dog in a cage?" Yeah, yes, I do. I put my dog in a cage. I said, when I was a kid, I had to sleep in my room. Yeah, I like my room. I had a record player, and I could play Beatles music and Turtles music. Yeah, Beach Boys stuff. I go up there, and I had 2 sisters, and I got away from them. I had a mom and dad. I got away from them. I like my room, and so dogs are like that. Sometimes they like their room. It's fine if they like their room, and it's actually a place of safety. I got one dog that likes to pick on the other dog, and if there's a fight and we're not in the house, there could be a problem. So we keep that. So we quote unquote mark the deck so nothing happens to either one of those dogs.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one. That's a big one with our Mila. She loves her bed. She loves her cage. Like she just will go in there on her own.
Sure.
Like that is her room. That's their bedroom.
Yep.
I think it's so funny.
Well, I mean, what do you do in your room? Well, you think about school. You think about your job.
Think about koi fish.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
exactly.
Gosh. I have one of my dogs here today. Rip.
Rip.
Yep. He is not a fish eater, so
he's a good pup.
Yep. Well, anyway, so what else do you have going on with your dog? Is that it?
That and the hips.
Okay.
The hips are the big one. Those have been a long term.
How old is your dog now?
She's 6. That's really been happening since she was 2.
Yeah, and that's what happens. Molly has a dog that has that, and those legs got pretty sloppy at a fairly young age. They make an injection called Librela that would work really good. I'd probably suggest you try the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories first and see if that improves everything. And if it really substantially improves the quality of her life, then that's really what you want to do. And I had a dog like this when I was a kid. Well, not when I was a kid. I got out of vet school and I was out probably 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years, something like that. And the guy brought a dog in and had been run over by a car, and he had actually 2 broken legs. And so, and his mantra was, how did he say this? He said, how did he put this? Money's not a problem. And he says, whatever it takes to fix this dog, do what you got to do. And I kind of could glean from him what that meant. Money was no problem because he didn't have any. And he wasn't going to pay anything to get his dog out, and he left him there. That was Bandit.
Oh.
And I could have, if I would have had Bandit in my 4th year of veterinary school, or my last year of veterinary school, I could have skipped the whole year because that dog had flea allergies. He ruptured a disc in his back. He had 2 broken legs. He got pancreatitis when I had a birthday party once, a pig roast.
Oh, no.
So yeah. So
he taught you a lot, though.
Yeah, he taught you. I knew a lot. And you know what else I figured out? I didn't have the slightest idea how to treat my own dog. I knew how to treat your dog. I knew how to treat Molly's dog. And I knew how to treat just about everybody's dog but mine because I had all different rules for me.
Right.
And the rules for me were different than they were for everybody else. And so when I have my dogs treated, I usually have one of the people at work, give me some adult, because I'm not an adult when I'm treating my own dog because I'm emotionally attached. Exactly. And we used to tell that to clients, I like your dog, but I love my own dogs. I got a few dogs I don't really like very well because they're not very pleasant, but most of the dogs I really like, they're friendly, they're nice, you enjoy them. Do I love them? No, I don't love them because I'm hired to do the thinking part of this, and sometimes that's a little more difficult, doing the thinking part of this.
Being emotionally disconnected.
Yep. Here's what I do.
Is it hard to do surgery on our dogs?
Yeah, I never do my own surgery.
Really?
You did river surgery?
I did river surgery. That's your mother's dog. Yep. But usually, like when we biopsied Cookie, I had Ron do that, Dr. Van Ryswick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he looked at it, he said, wow, it looks like cancer. And I said, no, I don't know. Maybe. So we biopsied her, and I said, so we got it back. And I said, this is what a really advanced case of copper stories looks like. That's what our dog died from.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's why as a family, we have passion about preventing that disease from happening.
And we do that with the food.
100%.
Yep.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with your dog, Storm?
I do have one more.
Okay.
So, my second dog, she's a silver lab. She's 2 years
why
old.
do you get all these?
I know.
Why don't you just get a black one?
I know. Everything but. But she.
So you know this about Christy Brinkley. She probably is fun to look at, but not that much fun to be married to. You were aware of that, right? I mean, said that she carries a little baggage. She's probably not listening to this, so I don't think I have any place to.
Is she's still around?
And she's still around.
Christy Brinkley?
Yep, she is.
How old is she?
She's probably in her upper 60s, I would guess.
For anybody that doesn't know, how many times have you threatened a divorce
I've told
over
my,
Christy Brinkley?
Christy Brinkley.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I told my mom, or that's what I told your mom. I told your mom that if Billy Joel ever left her, that there would be some decision making on my part, but there never was.
I'm pretty sure she's been divorced like 3 times.
Yep. So that's what I was telling you. The Silver Lab thing's fine. It's just, probably very attractive, but probably a little bit of baggage, which you're going to tell me about. Go tell me about the baggage you got with your Silver Lab.
So she's about 2.5 now, and she's funny to say the least. She's got personality, but she has had this issue, and it's persisted through the seasons where her whole underside, she just has gets really red and rashy and itchy. It's not like insanely itchy for her, but it just gets really red and rashy, and you can tell it's definitely not comfortable. And we aren't sure. We have no idea where it's coming from, honestly.
Well, it's probably contact allergy. We really don't think of dogs as having contact allergy very much, but we really know that the feet thing is contact. So it's possible. Does she lick her feet also, or not?
She actually does not.
Okay.
No.
So you're probably having some. She's. You know what you could do with this dog? This would be the dog. This would be the perfect dog to put a kid's cotton T-shirt on. And have her wear that around and see if that went away. This is my own personal dog. I might get a little stuff called Genesis, which is a topical steroid spray, and spray those areas. Sometimes there's a yeast or a bacterial infection in those, and so sometimes you got to deal with that at the same time. Although it's pretty amazing once you remove the allergen, some of those bacterial and yeast things kind of go away.
Okay.
Because really what happens in a there's hair follicles down there, and in the hair follicle there is sebaceous material.
Okay.
And that's made out of triglycerides. So the same thing cheese is made of. So there's like cheesy stuff that comes out of those hair follicles.
That's interesting.
Sebum. And then we think that sebum probably goes south a little bit. And then once, just like cheese, once stuff goes south, then stuff starts appearing on the cheese. That's when we get the paring knife out and take it off and see how long it takes to grow back. But I guess the point of fact being that mold won't be there if you get rid of the cheese. Period. Right. Yeah. So I would probably use a T-shirt on that dog and maybe some. There's a thing called Genesis spray. I like Genesis spray. Okay. And in fact, if I was you and I was kind of curious, I'd just spray the right side and see if that went down and stayed down. If it is, then you do both sides.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So with Mila, my other pup who has paw issues, you said that could be environmental with dust and things like that. What would be the best way to treat that? Well,
I mean, you're using Apoquel. You could even use that spray for that too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it really kind of depends on whether there's a bacterial yeast infection in those toes and stuff. And there probably is. So, hey, those dogs, sometimes I'll just stand them in vinegar and water for a couple minutes.
Yeah. Have you ever seen those paw scrubbers?
Yeah, you could do that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But vinegar and water kill stuff on contact. A lot of stuff, yeast and bacteria, most of them. But in white vinegar is cheap. I don't know, it's $2 or $3 a gallon. Maybe it's $4 a gallon. Hell, I don't know.
Do you just dilute that with water? Or just
half and half. Yep.
Okay.
And you use, and believe it or not, you use warm water. I think it feels a little better for them to stand in warm water. And the other thing is the greasy component. If you scrub them after they've been in warm water, it's like getting bacon grease out of the bottom of a pan. Do you use cold water to get bacon grease out? No. You always use hot water to do that. I don't want you to use hot water on your dog's feet, but it's easier to get that triglyceride film off if you want to do that. Yeah, sure.
Nice.
That makes sense. That's good to know. Then my experiment will be clean their paws and change their diet, change their treats for sure.
Change the treats first, then the diet, and then call your local veterinarian and have he or she fix out whatever needs to be fixed out for you.
I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, and really, what happened here today is we always talk about the information and peace of mind. So you're getting information. You probably got peace of mind that maybe things will get better if you've got at least a place to start.
Exactly.
Okay. Now you've got a place to start, and that's what veterinarians do. We in fact, it's we were kind of talking about things earlier, but it's sort of the things that we're in an electronic records age, and I really dislike spending a lot of time on the computer. I'd really much happier to spend time talking to you about this sort of thing than documenting everything I said to you today.
Exactly.
Well, while we're on the topic of good treats, we're going to finish it up with our last section, which is label lies, where I read off a dog, or actually we're going to do a treat label today.
Okay.
And you tell me everything wrong with what you see in this treat. Okay. This is a very popular treat. You can find it probably in any pet store. The first ingredient is pork.
I'm all right with pork.
Barley.
It's a bearded grain. You could be allergic to it, but probably not.
Rice.
I'm fine with rice.
Ground wheat.
Wheat's also a bearded grain. So from the food allergy standpoint, the wheat I'd like to see out of there. But, if your dog doesn't have food allergies, this is no big deal. That's fine. But this is mostly a grain treat. And because was pork number one?
Pork was number one.
Yeah. And does it say pork or pork meal?
It just says pork.
Okay, so it may have been wet when it went in there. So when you cook it down, it may not be that much pork in there. But I can't tell that. You have to know what the ingredient is. Only the people who make it know what the ingredient was. It says pork meal. It's usually 90% dry matter, 10% water.
Okay. Oatmeal.
Fine. Great.
Soybean meal.
It's fine.
Glycerin.
It's fine.
Sugar.
Well, I mean, it's sugar. Yeah, I know what it's for. Yeah, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it.
Corn,
probably makes it kind of sweet.
Corn gluten meal.
That's fine.
Ground yellow corn.
That's fine.
Wheat flour.
See, they got wheat in there twice. They got corn in there twice. So this is probably, in reality, by the time you cook the pork off, this is a corn and wheat treat, with some pork in it. But everybody who reads this thing would think this is mostly pork in there because it was number one. But if it was 80% water, now you push it down to the 7 or 8 part, and then you combine the 2 corns and the 2 wheats. Now you're pushing the wheat up. So it's called splitting. It's called ingredient splitting. Okay. So it's like an ear of sweet corn. There's the husk, and the silks, and the corn and the cob. So if you didn't want to know how much sweet corn you were putting in that thing, you'd have it listed way down there. Silk, you'd have it listed probably corn, cob, and then corn husk and for fiber or whatever, and then the silk. So in reality, it's a sweet corn treat, but everything's so far down, you don't see it as being that.
All right, you ready to keep going? Because
Sure.
this is a long ingredients list.
See, and this is way longer than anything ought to be, really. I mean, the truth of the matter is, we're turning this into kind of a old country buffet for treats. Yeah.
All in one.
The next ingredient is water.
Yep, that's about right.
Soy flour.
Yep. So the soybeans are in there twice.
Bacon soy protein concentrate.
Bacon soy protein. I don't know what that is.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. There's a comma. Bacon.
Yep, bacon. So
then soy protein concentrate.
we all think of bacon. We all like bacon. Yep.
Wheat gluten.
See, wheat's in there for the 3rd time. That's the protein part of wheat right there. And that's the part you'd be allergic to.
Salt.
Yep, it's fine.
Phosphoric acid.
Yeah, I don't know why they put that in there.
Bacon fat.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they're putting that in. They got bacon in there 2 or 3 times now.
Natural flavor.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're getting down to minuscule parts here now.
Sorbic acid.
Vitamin C.
Natural smoke flavor.
Yeah, it's just a flavor.
Cheese powder.
I wouldn't put that in there. How I feel about milk and so this thing has everything in it. This is
we're almost there, almost to the end.
It's got everyone you could think.
This is sort of beyond old country buffet. Even old country buffet doesn't have that much stuff in it.
I know. Calcium proteinate.
Yeah.
Added color.
Yeah.
Malted barley flour. The end.
Wow. Well, I mean, there's things in there multiple times.
Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, if I'd have made that treat, I'd have said pork, oats, corn, and wheat or whatever they want to do. I'd have had just 3 things or 4 things in there. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Maybe people, I don't know how people think. And maybe clients and you people out there listening to this would probably have a better idea than I do. But maybe you think, since it has so much stuff in it, it must be really good. you know, and like when you drive up in a car, and I'm thinking, well, this car has, you know, an engine, a V6, and then an automatic transmission, and then a drive shaft and a differential on the back. So that would be the 4 things I think about. But you come up and tell me, oh no, there's some staples in the glove box. You know, there's, you know, there's screws in the carburetor. There's 2 light bulbs up on the front of the car and everything. It's like, yeah, I guess. That's not what I was thinking about, the light bulbs when you pulled up with your car. You know. It had dual exhaust. I noticed that. It must go fast then. Although sometimes they don't. Sometimes what they used to call those no-go showboats.
They want to look fast.
They look like they're fast, but they're not that fast. But why they put all that stuff in there, I have no earthly idea. Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy, really. But if your dog likes it, fine. If your dog gets ear infections on it, don't feed it. So there's certainly things in there. There wasn't any beef, was there? Was there any beef?
No beef.
But there was wheat and milk, and so those are cheese, which is made out of milk. Yeah, but it looks like it's way down in the list. But hey, if you get a dog that's really sensitive to cheese, they're sensitive to cheese.
I'm questioning about the added color because I know that
that's for you. That's not for the dog because the dogs are semi-colorblind, so the dog could give a crap less.
Yeah,
that's all done for you.
You know how there's all this controversy going on in like our
additives,
food and the red dyes and everything like that, saying that it links to a bunch of different health concerns.
So if you read a peer-reviewed paper and it says that that's what happens, then it's what happens. But if it's not a peer-reviewed paper, it's just somebody's speculating around it, that's fine. That's just a fairy tale, and whether it comes true or not, I couldn't tell you.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Interesting. Well, I think we got a lot done today. We learned a lot.
Well, we should get some outro music going. Don't you think, Molly?
Yeah.
Okay, one of my favorite songs. Hey, we sure appreciate you guys listening along with us today, and we hope you've been able to share some information that will help you love your animals as much as they love you. Don't forget, always treat the treatable and prevent the preventable. We'll catch up with you next time.
Thanks, Storm, for being on today.
Yes, that was awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
You and your messed up dogs. It was really,
exactly.
really,
our crazy chocolates.
We'll have to get somebody else with messed up dogs.
Yeah. I'll keep you updated.
Okay. Hey, you know what? That'd be great. You come back in 2 months after you figured it all out.
We'll do an update.
Okay. Very good.
We'll do an update one. There you go. Thanks again, guys.
Yep. You bet. Bye-bye.